Recording. There you go.
And for the recorded record, we do have the chair, Arnold Valentin, present, member David Tate present, and Secretary Brendan Betts present. Chair, we do have a quorum.
All right, perfect. All right, so moving on to the next item in the agenda, that would be the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody could please stand and face the flag. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So let's go through. We have the fourth item on the agenda is the approval of the previous board minutes. And given that they pertain to this particular meeting, we'll go ahead and put those through. So, Mr. Secretary, would you be able to read the previous minutes?
It'd be my pleasure. We did last meet on October 26th. We called the meeting to order at approximately 6:12 p.m. We did have a quorum via the chair's presence, member David Tate's presence, and my presence, secretary. We did our Pledge of Allegiance, and we did take a moment to allow Township Council to address the question of the meeting's legitimacy, which he went through point by point and had confirmed with the Deputy Counsel for the DLGF. We approved the previous minutes unanimously. We did not have an update from our Township Trustee. However, we did have an update from the Fire Department. Year to date, we had at the time gone on 1,019 runs. Last year at this time, we had gone to 962 runs. Last year, we did a total of 1,217 runs. Deputy Chief Lewis, who gave his update from the fire department, said that we are on pace to break that mark. He also noted that there's been some communication between the trustee and him, and they had been having regular meetings via Zoom. Then the trustee missed a meeting and followed this up in the next week with a letter demanding mediation, or she would not pay the bills, which they have, I believe, agreed to have that mediation process. They have a plan moving forward to fund the paid personnel. He noted that he thinks she has a plan of some kind as well, and they're going to work to mediate and get that hammered out. The chair noted, however, that there also had been a study performed by the township's financial advisor to discuss those options of funding our paid staff. We had a presentation, we did not have a presentation of any additional documents at that time. The chair noted that there was a concern that we hadn't received any further documentation, which of course is relevant to today's meeting. The council noted that because there's some outstanding discussion and outstanding items between the township and the Firefighters Association, it is certainly possible for the board to do additional appropriations as an agreement is reached between the township and the association. We did also have an opportunity for public comment and communications. And we noted, we had a back and forth pardon between Jim Lewis and council as to whether certain forms had been filed via Gateway. And we also had Bill Jones share his expertise, noting that there are some major statements being made that were inaccurate. So I'll kind of talk about this statement as it contains and pertains to fact. You cannot do a Form 3 without putting in numbers for a Form 1 and for a Form 4 would need to be generated in Gateway for them, the board, to sign off on. To generate the Form 3, one would need to complete the Form 1, in short. So that was kind of the long story short there. Consideration, we moved on to the 8th item of business and consideration of the vote of the proposed budget. We had member David Tate, in light of our lack of information, move that a consultant familiar with the current system and software be provided access to our financial records to come in and make an assessment and to pass that along to the board, which has indeed occurred. This motion carried unanimously by the board. And we did pass resolution 2021-12, whereas Wabash Township Board has received incomplete financial records maintained by the trustee, and whereas the information provided year to date is insufficient to carry out the board's fiduciary responsibilities in approving the 2022 township budget, therefore be it resolved that a consultant familiar with the current software system will be provided access to our financial records and provide the board with an evaluation of the current fund status for each fund to be completed within 14 days. We did close debate on that, and it did pass unanimously. On the heels of this, we passed Resolution 2021-13, essentially the resolved statement. Let it be resolved that Wabash Township Advisory Board and Bill Jones will carry out an evaluation authorized in Resolution 2021-12. So we named Bill Jones, that consultant from the previous resolution. This resolution 2021-13 did carry unanimously by this board as well. On the 11th item of business, we had no old business. We discussed our future meetings, which at the time did not include this one here this morning. Instead, they included the dates November 16th and December 18th of this year. We then adjourned at 7:36 p.m. Do I hear any amendments, additions, edits to the minutes as constituted so far?
There is none over here.
Check in real quick.
Yeah.
Right, no one in chat. Okay, perfect. Seeing none, I will move that we adopt our meeting minutes from 10/26/21.
Second.
Okay, and I'll seek unanimous consent for my motion.
So given.
Excellent. Thank you very much, folks.
All right. So now that we've approved the previous board minutes, I want to take a moment prior to going into the township update to explain why we're meeting here today. I think that that's relevant. So following that meeting, given that trustee had not provided access to documentation, we reached out to DLGF, both David and I did, and in the end, we were able to receive limited access to some of the forms that were submitted during the budget process. So for an understanding of how those happens, there's a couple of forms that you fill out, and those populate other particular forms, including the form 4B, which is kind of the meat of the budget process. Now, we have uploaded those forms as they were uploaded, based with the information that the trustee and the financial advisor input into Gateway. So we have those forms 1, form 2, and form 4B available on the website. All right. And we've been able to go through and review them, and we wanted to be able to have an opportunity to have this meeting and further consider the proposed budget as is. So that's the reason why we are meeting here today, because we're basically at the end of the run of when we can go through the budget process. And thanks to DLGF, we were able to access those documents, given the trustee had not provided that information. That's just kind of the run view of what we did, why we're meeting here today. So the broad overview. So moving on to
Angel, can you confirm something for me?
Sure.
You just said that you posted the form 4B, form 1, and form 2.
Correct.
That were submitted to Gateway for 2022.
As with the information that was put in so that you could generate form 3. We've gone through with all of the different state agencies, and the process is, in case that you're not aware, you go through and you submit the information. There's a lot of different
submit which data. Forms.
So you plug in information, and the forms are auto-generated by Gateway based on the information that you input during the process of trying to create a budget notice. So that creates form 1, form 2, form 3, form 4, and form 4B. So those are the forms that are generated by Ms. Tyson. We'll move on to the next bit, but this is the
you
process.
Don't want to talk about, so you're saying that there's been
Ms. Tyson, you're not recognized.
So you don't want to know what was
Ms. Tyson,
submitted.
You'll have an opportunity. Mr. Jones, you're recognized to explain, if you're able to, how those forms are generated, given your expertise, since this apparently is also a point of contention.
So you don't want to know what I submitted on Gateway?
We've gained access to the information that you submitted. That's what we did. I
didn't submit any information to Gateway except for the advertised form.
Ms.
There's
Tyson,
only one form that was submitted to Gateway.
Ms. Tyson, we've also corroborated with our financial advisor that the information available on Gateway is the one that you instructed him to submit. So that's the information as submitted by your office to Gateway, because otherwise, without providing those line items and all of that information, we wouldn't be able to generate a budget notice. These are all required information.
No, that's not accurate.
All right, well, we'll move on.
Listen to me, Angel.
Ms. Tyson, you're not recognized.
Listen to me. This is very important that you understand what I submitted to Gateway. There was only one form that I submitted to Gateway, which is what it shows just right now today. Notice to taxpayers form 4 currently in Gateway is the information I entered and the information I submitted. And I submitted it to the board and to Gateway. I have not submitted, nor have I filled out any information on Form 4B or Form 1. The notice to taxpayers was not automatically generated from those other forms.
Ms. Tyson,
we overrode. Angel, listen to what I'm telling you. I'm the one that submitted it. I'm the one that can explain
Ms. Tyson, you did not
done.
submit it because our financial advisor was the one that filled out the forms, and we're not going to go.
What financial advisor?
Reedy Financial.
Reedy Financial did not fill out the taxpayer notification. I filled it out. Reedy Financial got on the phone with me. We reviewed the documentation that I submitted or that I filled out on the form, the notice to taxpayers form. We reviewed it to make sure that we were going to receive our maximum levy. And then we submitted that form to Gateway. That is the only form that has been submitted to Gateway or completed for 2022. And you have that, and you have had that the entire time.
Right. So, Mr. Jones, if you'd be able to speak as to the process of how these forms are generated and the budget process. I know that you're in the meeting, so given that there seems to be some contention about this, I'll give you the opportunity to share if you'd like.
I believe that the issue is a matter of semantics. When you enter Gateway as a local official, you fill those forms out, and they are your work till you finish the budget and you submit it into the other public side of Gateway. What DLGF provided your board is the work that was submitted on the local government official side. And that work found several things that were in error, and those have been addressed and discussed with your board.
Correct.
Okay, and so you saw on the login side of Gateway, the non-public side of Gateway, that we have not submitted any form except for the notice to taxpayers. I did not complete the other forms.
Ms. Tyson, because those forms are completed upon the signature of Form 4, which
they are not.
Which
no,
basically
somebody entered information in Form 1, in Form 2, in Form 4B, and that information was provided to your board in PDF and Excel formats.
Yeah. I did not fill out any information.
It doesn't make any difference who filled it out. It's in your responsibility as trustee that information.
No, but what I'm saying to you is,
Ms. Tyson, you're not recognized. Ms. Tyson, you're not recognized. Ms. Tyson, you are not recognized.
So you don't want to come to the bottom of this.
Well,
I just want to get to the bottom. I just want to understand what it is that you're saying. What information?
I think you need to get to the bottom of who submitted what out of your office, trustee.
I know what was submitted. It clearly says that the forms today do not say that they were submitted to Gateway.
And I think that point has been made. Can we move on, please?
No, it's very clear inside the elected official side of Gateway what has been submitted and what hasn't. You can't say that there are errors on forms that haven't been submitted. That information isn't even intended to be. Well, then it's a great thing we caught them before they were submitted,
now isn't it?
I'm sorry, what?
In a normal situation.
Well, then it's a great thing we caught it before we submitted it, now isn't it?
No, I haven't even started filling out those forms is what I'm telling you.
Those forms are
So I think we should move on.
You'd go into Gateway on the local official side, you'll see what DLGF provided your board. Those forms are filled out.
They are not filled out. I just logged in. I literally just logged in. They are not completed. And they say not ready to submit on them. So I don't know why you would be looking at information that didn't come from
Jennifer,
me. I'm sorry.
Please answer my question. If you just logged in, please look at the forms for 4B and tell me if there's data. Is there data?
4B?
There is data, yeah.
The calculation.
You want to know if there's a date in it?
Data.
Oh, not that I saw, no. Not
Would you please
on
look
the form.
again? On form 4B and your side of Gateway.
Form B, so form B has two separate types of data. It has data that is auto-populated from other forms, and then it has areas that you can enter data. And all of the places where you can enter data on form 4 were at 0 when I logged in. That means they have, and they also, there's a big
Is there a tax rate
yellow mark on it
on
that says
4B?
not ready for submission.
Right. Is there a tax rate calculated on form 4B for any of your funds?
Oh, I don't know. You mean did that come from another form, or did I enter that information into form 4B?
Would you please look and see if there's any information in form 4B?
There's information that comes from other places. What I'm saying to you is that on the form 4B, when you go to fill it in, there are areas on the form where you would fill in information on that form.
Right. You put in.
There has not been any information entered from me for 2022 on the form 4B that would have been from that form.
Is there a tax rate?
If that's pulled in from another form.
No, the tax rate is calculated in form 4B. And
no, then I don't. No, then I have not entered any information into form 4B.
Okay. Then your fiscal consultant has done something because there's information in form 4B.
Okay, but my point to you is we have not reviewed that information. I have not entered that information, and I have not looked at it. So it's not accurate information. It's not anything that the board would want to consider.
If you have not completed form 4B, you cannot generate form 4 that you're asking the board to sign.
No, that is absolutely untrue. We bypassed form 4B. And we completed the notice to taxpayers, and that is very clear inside of Gateway.
At a budget adoption meeting, you have to sign form 4, and it is generated by data in form 4B. In your current system.
No, we did not auto-generate it from, that's what I'm telling you, Bill. That's not how we did it. Reedy Financial went in and bypassed form 4B, and all we completed was form 4. And we did that for a very specific reason. Because there's
the level of incompetence that you're demonstrating to be able to come in here and tell the person that's been doing this job for over a decade that the process for creating a budget is completely different than the one that everybody else goes through, and that you did not fill out forms that are necessary to be able to notice a meeting to the public on the subject of a budget, that it's necessary for the establishment of form 4 to be able to sign into a budget. Like, what kind of what's going on in your office? What the hell's going on in your office that you have the information?
Yeah, so as I was,
and you're claiming it's not there.
So as I was explaining to you, I can tell you exactly what we did to complete the notice for taxpayers and why we did it that way. We did not fill out form 4. There is no information on form 4 that you are considering today that is coming from me, coming from my office, or coming from our financial advisors. We're not asking you to consider that information. There's two different things that happen during a budget process. You set the tax levy and you appropriate funds. Is that right, Bill?
There's no use in talking to you. You don't even know what's in your own forms. And you're
I do know what's in the forms. I'm the one that completed it.
The DLGF sent what you have in the local government, your official side, to this board.
Yes, but we haven't submitted those. Those haven't been completed. They are not.
So what?
They're not done.
So
they have
what
to be
leprechaun
completed
logged
to
in?
have an adoption meeting.
What is the purpose of having budget meetings? So that's what I'm saying. So having
If
the
you're having an adoption meeting, you have to
levy.
declare the levy,
Correct.
the budget, and the tax rate on Form 4.
So Form 4B that the board has today would set the tax levy.
That's correct. And
that's correct. And they could,
those numbers are transferred to Form 4, and that's the signature page that you sign in an adoption meeting.
That's correct. And had we had an agreement on what the levy was going to be set at, Form 4 would have been completed and submitted to the board for an adoption meeting. But they refused to meet with me. And they refused to talk about the budget, and they refused to talk about the tax rate and how we were going to proceed.
Ms. Tyson, there's clearly...
I know you're very frustrated by that, Angel, but that's just the truth.
That's not how the budget process works, Ms. Tyson.
It is.
And you know we're meeting right now,
It can
right?
work this way.
You don't get to rewrite the process for the state of Indiana. The only way that we're able to have these meetings is when you fill out the information for Forms 1.
We did not change the process for the budget, Angel. You are just not reporting this accurately. That is not what has happened. The lawyer, Reedy Financial, and myself submitted to the board the notice to taxpayers to discuss the tax rate. That's what we asked you to discuss. And I don't know why that hasn't happened. And I don't know what's going on with the board that we can't have these meetings, but I think that we need to meet and we need to do what's best for the taxpayers of Wabash Township.
Ms. Tyson,
and that is to get on the same page about the information.
Ms. Tyson, these series of meetings, this meeting, the last meeting, and the meeting before that, when the budget was presented, are what those meetings are, but they can only happen, statutorily speaking, once the information for Forms 1, 2, 3 gets filled in so that Form 4B and Form 4 can be auto-populated and generating the public notice. You cannot, I'm not interested in you coming and telling us that the sky is actually green. That's not the process.
But what you're saying is not true. It can happen that way, and it can also happen the way that I'm telling you, which is what we did. We did not work on Form B. If you log in directly to the right of it, it shows you a yellow stamp that says not ready to submit.
Just because it's
not, there's no information that's going to help you from that. Go ahead and do whatever it is you're going to do.
Mute myself and then you can ask it over there. Turn on the mic. Turn it on. Yeah, turn it on.
Jennifer, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so just so I understand, the information that you and Reedy, and was the town council, the township council involved in this submission?
No.
Okay, so I'm getting some feedback.
You're good.
If I understand this, the information that you and Reedy Financial and the township council, Mr. Biederman, submitted is an entirely different set of numbers than what the state agency, the Department of Local Government Finance, through their own system provided us. So evidently, those numbers that the Department of Local Government Finance provided us to evaluate are different than what you have submitted. Is that correct?
No, absolutely not. So you're saying there are 3 forms. That's what they're saying today. They're saying there are 3 forms: Form B, Form 4, and Form 1. correct? That's what you understand. There's a notice to taxpayers, and then there is a detailed line item budget. The notice to taxpayers is the only thing that I submitted to you.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get an answer. I understand what you're saying. So just so I can follow you, the numbers that you have indicated or what you said you've done through with Reedy and Mr. Biederman submit is a different set of numbers than what the state agency, the Department, Local Government Finance supplied us?
No, did they give you the Form 4B? Did they give you the notice to or the form? Yeah, the Form 4B is the notice to taxpayers, correct?
Correct.
Form 4, I mean.
That's
notice to taxpayers, Form 4. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused.
That's Form 3. The notice
to taxpayers, whatever form that is, the notice to taxpayers. You have that in front of you, right?
They have a Form 1, they have a Form 4B, they have a Form 4 and a Form 2 that were all extracted from the local government official side.
Yes, but there was only one form submitted on
Right.
Gateway.
It's a matter of semantics. I'm sorry that we don't understand the exact words. The important aspect here,
submitted. Well, the semantics are important here, because that's the whole thing that we're talking about.
Generate the Form 4 for them to sign at an adoption meeting. Those numbers are fixed because form shows the budget, the levy, and the tax rate proposed by the unit.
And which form is that? The notice to taxpayers?
No, the notice to.
Okay, this is what I'm trying to tell you without making this overly complicated. The notice to taxpayers form is the only form that has been submitted to the state. It is the only form that has been given to the board. It is the only form that I asked them to consider.
You have to print Form 4 for the board to sign.
We did not do that. So what we did was we did the notice to taxpayers and we asked the board to meet with us so that we could discuss the tax rate. And that didn't happen. So none of the rest of the information was submitted or completed or printed out or given to the board.
So are you admitting that your office didn't do their job, yet the numbers appeared?
I am confirming for you, Angel, that what I asked you to do was meet with us and discuss the tax levy so that we could move forward in the budget process. Because I don't know if you've noticed this. I mean, I'm sure that you're aware. We have been in complete disagreement about how this process was supposed to be managed. So I gave you offers to come and meet with me and to discuss the budget so that we could move forward in the process. And that didn't happen. So you have no new information from my office at this meeting.
That's correct, because you refused to provide it.
That's correct.
We got it from DLGF.
You refused to provide
it.
Yeah.
Well, then we all agree. No, you didn't get it from DLGF because none of that information has been submitted to DLGF.
To provide the information.
See, that's the semantics part of this that nobody seems to understand.
Ms. Tyson,
you're considering information that hasn't been submitted to the state. It's completely useless. I didn't complete it. I didn't fill it out. It's not done. It's not ready for in a submittable format. There's no new information that the board is considering today.
When was that going to occur? Trustee, in your universe, when was that going to occur? When were you going to be ready to actually submit this? And when we agreed on are we doing them? I didn't understand what you were doing. I don't understand what the board is doing or what your plans are for the township. If it wasn't submitted and wasn't done, when were you going to submit it, trustee?
I wanted to meet with the board prior to the adoption. I'm sorry, you read that into the record like 4 times, right? That I offered to meet with all of the members of the board to understand what their questions were about the maximum levy and get on some kind of understanding of what the board wanted to do.
Half dozen meetings on the issue.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you just say we had a half a dozen meetings about this?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, they've been public meetings, trustee. You've sat in them muted and quite silent and reluctant to
I
provide
didn't
any
hear you guys
information.
say anything
So,
about
trustee, I'll
trying to
ask
get the
one more
maximum
time.
tax
When were you
levy.
going to submit this? And were
Did
you going to do this
did you
prior
talk
to the
about your
deadline?
plan for the,
Ms.
okay, well, I did
Tyson.
not understand any of your meetings to move
Oh,
us
I'm sorry,
forward.
trustee. When were you going to submit this, and was it going to be prior to the deadline? If you hadn't submitted this, and if it wasn't done under your own admission, was it going to be submitted prior
We
to the deadline?
submitted everything. We submitted everything
Ms.
for
Tyson,
the budget
Ms.
meeting.
Tyson, we're gonna
Interesting.
do something.
You're gonna
slightly
move on?
Miss-
Okay, all right,
Mr.
let's move on
Jones.
then.
Mr. Jones, would I be able to have you, and this is, I'm recognizing Mr. Jones, Ms. Tyson. So this is, you're not allowed to interrupt. I know that Zoom allows you to just break in and whatnot, but you're not recognized, Mr. Jones. So that we have a clear understanding of the budget process, of the statutory part of the budget process, right? We can have meetings before, like we did, and talk about what we'd like to have funded, et cetera. But those meetings are not binding. They're essentially a form of a conversation that's open to public meetings, similar to other stuff. When we start into the budget process, the first part of it is that the trustee has a budget that they are ready to propose, or have a budget that they're going to propose, and they have to input the information onto Gateway through this software here that we have. That generates forms 1, 2, 3, 4, 4B. And once those are generated, you know, form 3 gets uploaded. We go through, that appears with a budget notice. And those numbers that are provided there cannot be changed by the board in the particular direction of taking them higher. All we can do is change between characters, like, you know, within services, or like, you know, fund 1111, we can say we're going to move money from this part of 1111 to this other part. But this thing that she submits online is the basis on which we are going to make this decision. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right. Let the record reflect that our understanding is accurate. This is also, for the record, what DLGF has stated when we've met with them about what the process is. The only way that we get to having these 3 meetings that were noticed online are if a budget has been proposed and that generates the budget notice. And we can't change what, and Ms. Tyson can change it, but she has another 10 days to submit a budget notice, as I understand it. So like, you can change it, but then you need 10 days to be able to do that. Otherwise, you can't at all, because you have to provide 10 days of notice before a budget can be considered. And that data is available online and it's on Gateway. Is that accurate?
It's available on the local government official side of it. It's
correct.
not on the public side.
Yeah, and that's available essentially to any local official that has access to Gateway and the DLGF. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Can move on. Just closing out this segment, you know, we can't invent our own system of how we work. This is just the way that it works. Doesn't matter what any of us wants the process to be like, what we personally like it to be like. That's the statutory part of the process. It does not change because we have opinions or thoughts. That's just the way it is. All right. Going into township update, is there any update from the Office of the Trustee? That's a no. Is there any update from the fire department?
There's no update from the fire department.
There's no update from the fire department. That we covered that 4 days ago, so I understand why there wouldn't be any new updates. Presentation of additional documents. Now, we have the documents as are available and as the only ones that we can consider in this budget process, because it's the ones that are uploaded onto Gateway. It's the only thing that we have. It's the only thing that's available. It's the only thing we can work off of. That's what it is. Wanted to have an opportunity to be able to show people what those documents look like. They're available, but we can go through and quickly look through them. So, oh, let me enable sharing because
Can you tell me where your documents are on the website?
If you go to wabashboard.com, they're available.
Okay, I'm on the website. Where is it?
You go at the top, there's a thing, attend Saturday's meeting. You'll be able to see them there.
Okay.
They're also available on Gateway on your end.
So these are screenshots?
No, they're downloaded versions of it. It's not a screenshot. When you go into Gateway, you're allowed to download documents. And given that we have read-only access to our units, financial process for the budget, that's the only part we have access to at the moment, because the LGF overrode the normal process to allow us to see these documents. And we're able to see those, and you can print them off. I have to.
So it's a screenshot of the budget notice website. Okay.
It's not a screenshot.
The budget notice. The notice to taxpayers.
No,
Okay,
ma'am.
got it. I got it.
That's not the.
I got
those
it.
are not.
I got it. It's a link. I got it. It pulled up. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the documents that you'll see here are the ones that are available and that generated the notice as we discussed earlier. So let's open them here. So looking here, this is budget form 1. It's generated by the DLGF's gateway. And essentially it says on rainy day that we're planning on using $35,000 in utilities for line items for fire. You can see that that's the entirety of the budget for the rainy day fund as proposed by Ms. Tysing and the Office of the Trustee, I guess. Additionally to that, there is pay of Township Board, $7,500, which divided between 3 members, it's $2,500 a piece. Salary of the Deputy Trustee, which in the case of our office has essentially been just the office staffer. I don't think we've ever had a Deputy Trustee. Is $28,417. Ms. Tysing continues at $35,729. She's proposed $0 in insurance for herself and the Deputy Trustee. There is $6,120 for PERF, and that is the retirement plan for the trustee. Social Security, so where it's paying for those 2 individuals, $7,000. Office supplies, $1,591. Postage, $250, printing, $250. He's proposed $31,000 in professional services for consult/legal. That's basically been in the past our township council, and our financial advisor. Printing an advertisement, that would be $1,530. You see it here. Insurance, there's $6,000. Who would that insurance be towards, or what would it be used towards, ma'am? Since it's not an employee benefits, would that be insurance for the building?
Are you asking me a question?
Yes, on your budget.
Okay. So I did not complete this form that you're reading into the record, nor am I proposing it. This is not a proposed budget from me. I did not submit this to the board. I did not submit this to the state. The DLGF has not seen any of this information. So I don't know what it is that you're looking at, but this is not my proposal.
Ms. Tyson, we've sat with DLGF members. They can see these forms. That's how they knew to give us access to them.
Jennifer,
On
somebody.
how they can always see everything that's inside the system. If you
Jennifer,
have
then you
it,
just
so I could
contradicted
go in
yourself,
here and
Trustee.
I
Thank
could
you.
put any information that I wanted to and let it sit there until you submit
you
it to the state. It's not an accurate record of what I'm proposing. I did not submit
And
this
when were you going to submit that
nor
again,
did I
Trustee?
submit this to the
Trustee?
DLGF.
When were you going to submit that? When were you going to submit that to the state, Trustee?
Yes, we were, the second step of the budget process
No,
that I was going
when?
to do
I'm
was
sorry. No, I
completing
have to
this
make that
form
question.
after we
When?
discussed the maximum levy. So you have
So
to,
that's
so we
not a
have to
when.
understand what the overall fund would look like before
No,
we
Trustee.
can talk
When were
about
you going
line
to submit the
items.
requisite forms to the fiduciary
Are you
responsible body?
are you
and the
confused, Brendan?
Department of
I'm
Local Government
confused.
Finance?
I'm confused about what it is that you're asking me.
We understand that you're
When were you going to
confused. You've
upload the
demonstrated
requisite
it.
forms? Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so the first step that I was trying to take with the board is the
No,
notice to
ma'am.
taxpayers
No,
for the
ma'am.
fund
Nope.
amount.
No, ma'am.
The second
No,
step
ma'am.
is completing
Nope.
the form that you're looking at now. Yeah, yes, that's what I was doing.
When were you going to
I can
submit
tell
the
you
requisite
exactly what
forms
I
and
was
finalize
doing.
those numbers, Trustee? When were you going to finalize those
Yeah,
numbers
after
and submit
we
them to this board?
discussed the form that was the notice to taxpayers. So you
Right, and why
understand what
didn't
the
that occur
notice
in one of
to
our previous meetings?
Brendan, listen, let me ask a question. Let me ask a clarifying question. You understand what the notice to taxpayers has on it?
Yeah, which form is that again, Trustee?
The notice to taxpayers.
What's the
Yeah,
form?
is that the Form 1 or the Form 3?
I have it down as the Form 4 in my notes.
That's a Form 3.
So the notice to, that's the important takeaway here, what the form number is called,
I'm
not
just glad
how
you're
it's
so
going to
well-versed
affect the
and you feel so
taxpayers of
well
Wabash
endowed to
Township.
school me in
This
Thank you so
information
much,
is
Trustee.
actually what we're doing here today is important stuff. And what we should be talking about is how what we're doing is going to impact our community. So what has been submitted to the DLGF and to the board is a notice to taxpayers that has the total amount of the fund. Which fund are you looking at here? The 101, the general fund. So that number, the maximum tax levy number, is on the notice to taxpayers.
Ms. Tyson, so if I understand that you didn't submit it, how was this submitted? Is there anyone that in this
On hell,
conspiratorial
it's
world that
not
submitted
been
it?
submitted. You can print it out before it's been submitted. You went into the back end of the system and you printed a report that has not been sent to the state.
Excuse me,
Right, that you
it has
refuse to
been
provide this body.
entered in the Gateway program. It has not.
It has not been submitted, Bill. There's a submission process that has not been done.
But
yes,
but excuse me, could you please listen to me for 30 seconds? Someone, either your consultant, somebody entered these numbers in the local official side of Gateway. And then they moved them to the adopted column in terms of having an adoption meeting where Form 4 is generated for the board to sign. It's immaterial who did it. You gave the authority to someone else to enter this.
I did not.
Jennifer, it's there. This
I'm
isn't magic.
I'm just telling you what we've done. We have not completed this form. We have not submitted to the state. We have not reviewed it. Myself, the lawyer, nor our financial consultant.
How did these numbers get put in? You're looking at a form that's filled out and moved to the adopted column. Who did it?
I can't, I'm not saying that anybody did it. I'm not saying that it happened. I didn't do it. Reedy Financial did not do it on my behalf under my consent. And our lawyer has not reviewed these forms. No one from the township has reviewed these forms or submitted them to the board for review.
That's actually false. We've reviewed these forms, and thank goodness somebody has.
Yeah.
No, I said no
I know what
one
you
from.
said. I was here 5 seconds ago. Thank you.
How did the numbers get there?
Okay, well, is this the important part about the conversation? Is this what we should be arguing about? Is whether or not a form has been submitted or not?
Right.
Because it has
It's
not.
not-
How did the numbers get there?
Clearly, that
Right.
has not
How did
been
the numbers
submitted.
get there? Yeah. And when were they going to be submitted?
Yeah. Because
And they were going to be submitted after we had a conversation about the tax levy that we advertised to the community.
Ms. Tyson, that's
Which you
not,
said previously is just going to be the maximum levy. So what's the conversation other than saying we're going to ask for the maximum levy? That's the extent to which you've ever said anything about
Is
the
that
tax
what
levy.
we're okay? Well,
That's the extent to which you've ever
then
said
we can
anything over
still-
the span of years, trustee. That's been your position.
It's my
and you said the
understanding that
same
we
thing
can
on the
still
tax
do that
rate for
today.
years.
You can, so you
I'm
can
just
do
saying,
that
what's the
today. You
conversation
can
you're
vote on
alluding
the
to? What is the smokescreen of some
Okay,
conversation you're
again,
alluding to?
what's
There's no
important for
conversation
the
that needed to
taxpayers
transpire.
of Wabash Township is that we get the maximum levy. That's what's important here today.
Ms. Tyson, what's important to the taxpayers isn't that we raise the most taxes possible. It's how we use those tax dollars. And that's what we're here to discuss. Because
yes, and you can do that after this meeting today.
Ms. Tyson, we cannot. Here's an explanation of how the process works for you, Ms. Tyson. You provide these numbers. These numbers were uploaded in a normal process with a normal competent trustee. Even if the board doesn't have access to the LGF side on the elected official side, which is the case for us, the trustee would provide.
Do you think that your personal attacks are going to get us anywhere?
The process then moves on to the trustees.
Can we not keep this in a professional? I want to keep this in a professional manner so that we can hold an actual meeting.
Ms. Tyson, stop interrupting. The trustee sends these documents to the board. The board looks at them, considers the specific line items as proposed by the trustee, decides how to move them, if so, within the category. That is, we can't move money from the 111 fund to the 0101 fund just because we'd like to, and we also cannot go above the total for any fund number. We cannot. So when we go and sit here, we sign on. If we decide.
Okay, so I'm sorry, did you just say that we cannot move money from one fund to another?
That is
talking about the board's unilateral access to do so.
Yeah.
Okay, unilateral access, but we can do that.
Right, through resolution.
Well,
okay, thank you. I'm glad that I'm glad that you acknowledge that.
Certain
so
funds.
what?
Ms. Tyson,
I'm glad that you acknowledge that.
Ms. Tyson,
that's absolutely right. We can change all of these things except setting the tax levy. That is the thing that we have to do today.
Mr. Jones.
With restrictions.
Mr. Jones, how easy is it to move funds between money between different funds? How often are we allowed to move money from different funds? From, let's say, the firefighting
Why do we need
fund?
to know how often it is? The point is the deadline for today.
Ms. Tyson, stop interrupting. Ms. Tyson.
The other things can be done after today.
Jesus Christ, please stop interrupting.
And if one is
but you're not
on doing
on
that,
hell.
I'm
just trying to get on the same page with you and work
I am not
together
speaking to you, Ms. Tyson, please. Mr. Jones, are we allowed to move money between different funds right now?
Only by statutory authority that expired September 1st. Exactly.
So, except for very special circumstances as delineated by this Indiana State House, that is the House, the Senate, with approval of the governor, that's the only way and only circumstances when we can move funds from one fund, money from one fund to another.
I'm sorry, did you just say the governor approves the moving of funds?
No.
he approves the legislation that allows us to occasionally move funds. It allows, right now, the only way that we can move money between different funds is based on the authority of that specific House Enforced Act that allowed us a one-time transfer between funds and which we chose to use for $500,000 between Cume Fire Fund and the Firefighting Fund. Other than that, unless the state legislature authorizes another one-time exception or decides to allow us more than one-time exceptions, we can't move money between funds. We cannot do that.
That's not, so you're saying that we would not be able after today to move money from funds.
We've never been able to move money from one fund to another.
Certain funds. There are in fact a few funds where you can move money, right? Rainy day and general ops, generally, right?
Yeah, but not firefighting fund and Cume Fire.
Exactly, precisely.
The most important ones.
Yes. So there's some circumstances where you can, of course. But
what do you mean the most important ones? Why would we move money out of fire or
that sounds
out
like
of the
digging into the minutia, don't you think, Jennifer? Is that the important bit? I mean,
yeah, I think it's important that we talk about. So the thing that we can do today that will help the taxpayers of Wabash Township is to set the
maximum
rate and
not tell them what we're going to do with it. I understand your point, Trustee. Thank you.
What are we going to do with that? That's it. We can have that conversation. I think you
submitting a line item budget would have been an excellent idea. Tell us what you would do with it. Instead, we gained access, and that's what we're reviewing.
So we can, after today, review the spreadsheet that I gave on Hell 3 months ago for his review. We can meet after this, and we can solve all of these things. That's something that we can do for Wabash Township.
So, point of clarification, Chair, what's next on the agenda?
Brendan and Jennifer, just a quick question here so I can resolve all this in my mind. I'm not in favor of any additional meetings. We've had plenty of meetings that have indicated a budget review process, posted public. That's what these meetings are for. Now, I'm trying to help with this, Jennifer, so I understand your position, our position. If I understand correctly, is what the figures that you have submitted, the documents that you have submitted, do not align and agree with the documents that the Department of Local Government Finance has provided us.
No, that's not accurate.
Okay, well then what I would suggest
those forms weren't submitted. They haven't been submitted. We haven't even started to discuss them yet.
Okay, and I take your point, and I think that's very valid. And at this point, I think there has been some kind of falsification of records somewhere along the line, and I call for state investigation.
You had, in order to investigate something, it would have to have been submitted, David. The point that I'm trying to make is that you have one thing that's been submitted.
Lied? Did DLGF lie? And did Bill Jones totally misconstrue the budget process over the past how long?
I don't know what anybody told you. There's been one form submitted to the DLGF. Well,
maybe we should ask some folks to look into that. It sounds like we might want to. So I'll go back to my point of order and clarification. Chair, what's next on the agenda?
No, I think that we're confusing.
Chair, what's next on the agenda?
We're confusing whether or not a system exists and whether or not something has been submitted.
Well, beyond reading through these documents, which Ms. Tyson keeps interrupting, the next part of the agenda
these have not been submitted. So these are completely
so thank you for repeating that point of clarification. What's next on the agenda, nothing. Chair?
Yeah, sorry, she was interrupting and you couldn't hear me. I said, in addition to this reviewing these documents, the next part is an opportunity for public comment and communications. Now, I need her to stop interrupting so that we can continue through this process, because it's been an hour and we're sitting here not being able to actually review the documents. Now,
thank you, Chair.
I'll take a quick second, and there are no interruptions allowed, Ms. Tyson, please. The way that this process plays out is these documents, which are only finalized once a board approves a budget, they go through. These are submitted as such. Prior to approval of a budget, the board can choose. Let's say that the general fund says right now here, $170,000 is the proposed budget for the general fund that the trustee proposed. the published general fund of $170,000. Now, what can the board do with that? There are certain limitations. The board cannot slash the trustees' fund. We cannot, without the trustees' approval, decrease the trustees' salaries. But we can go through, and other than that, we can change what we're going to use the money in each category as long as we're under $170,000. Same thing for township assistance, fire protection, fire equipment, cumulative fire. That's how that process plays out. But if we were to have done, as has happened in previous years, and generally accepted the budget as published, that would have meant that this form, which has been filled out by somebody, would be the approved budget of the township unless we said otherwise, because this is the documentation that we're signing upon. We don't sign just global numbers. Then after the fact, what the board could do during the normal course of a fiscal year is say, we can move money. We're going to move $12,000 from the position here, let's say from consult and legal funds, and say we're going to move $12,000 from within the 0101 fund and moving it over to printing. Let's assume that the board decided to waste their money and put it in printing. We could theoretically do that if we'd liked, but that's just how it works. We can only move stuff within funds after approval of a budget. That's how that part works. Then after we approve a budget or choose not to, based on whatever the final allowed levy is and how much for each character is available, then the board could also use an additional appropriation if there is a money available in leftover funds for the fund, and if we're under the maximum levy, then we could create an additional appropriation that could raise money up to the point of the max levy. That's what the board can do by going through the additional appropriation process. Right now, what we are considering is the budget as the information was put online. That's what we can do, and we can choose to move money between these particulars. So if you have any suggestions about how this is wrong and where you'd like to change it, take a few minutes while we're doing this. It should have been done before, but take a few minutes and tell us how you'd like changes to happen, and we can consider them in today's meeting, because the last day to do it is on Monday, and we're going to be doing it today. There's not going to be any further meetings because they would have to be emergency meetings, and that's not allowed under the budget.
Okay, you're asking me.
Yes, I told you take a few minutes and write it down.
Okay, I don't need a few minutes. I can tell you exactly how to do this. So go get the form one.
Ms. Tyson, not yet, Ms. Tyson. We're reviewing the documents as presented. In a few minutes, we'll give you an opportunity to say how you need those to be changed, okay? Not currently your turn to speak.
I thought you were asking me a question.
I said take a few minutes. I didn't say answer right now.
I don't need a few minutes.
Then in a few minutes, when it's your opportunity to speak, you'll be able to share what changes you propose to the forms your office has generated online.
I have not submitted these documents, nor have I
don't
completed
care.
them.
These are the documents as the process allows them to. Whether you did it or you believe that it didn't happen, these are the documents as are. So we're gonna go through. You know, you're gonna wait a few minutes, and then you can tell us what changes you'd like. Go to public comments. I will finish this here, and then we'll go to public comments. All right, so can't believe we've taken so long on the general fund. Other than that, general funds also include stuff like the cemeteries, for example. Let me find it here. So we have grounds maintenance, we have $27,000, and cemetery right now we have a proposed only $11,935 for cemeteries. Now, I believe that that's a little low, and we can talk about that in a bit. As far as township assistance goes, right now we have the few dollars in supplies. We have $10,000 out of township assistance that's meant to be used towards assistance regarding utilities. We have a proposed $39,700 for utilities, for housing, excuse me, township assistance, $0 for township assistance regarding prescription, $0 for funerals, burials, and cremations, and $0 for other direct relief. Additionally, going on to the firefighting fund, which is the 1111 fund, there are $0 proposed for a salary of a chief. There are $27,000, 180 proposed for firefighter pay. And I'll take a moment here to make a side comment that this is a two-part when it comes to salaries. It's a two-part process. It's allocated within the specific funds. And then secondly, it's also the salary resolutions are there. So the salary resolutions still indicate that we can only hire three full-time firefighters for however much pay those are outlined at right now. I don't remember them. I don't have them in front of me at the moment. And we have, there's a salary resolution that allows for the hiring of one fire chief, as well as part-time staff if needed, which is in the case that a firefighter is sick or is out on vacation, stuff like that. It allows the fire department, if we had paid firefighters, to continue to have those services, all right? In addition to that, there's $0, for, as we said, for part-time. So there's no money allocated towards a part-time staffer. So the only way that a firefighter could currently be paid is if they were hired for 6 months or something like that, and then they'd have to let go, given that there's no money to pay a firefighter the rate at which we've approved the salary. There's $0 for health insurance, there's $0 for PERF, there's $0 for Social Security. So any firefighter that's currently working wouldn't have any money covered to go towards Social Security. So there's clearly some issues in the fire department budget. There's $0 towards unemployment, $6,120 towards operating supplies for medical purposes. There's $40,000 for repairs and maintenance supplies. And then there's $10,200 for operating supplies, $12,500 for professional services within the service and charges categories. So that's $12,500 is the maximum that can be used for, say, a lawyer regarding fire department business or stuff like that, or other professional services that could be provided regarding that. There's also $23,000 for utilities, given that's an important part of the fire department, including water, for example, which is a big part, obviously. There's non-medical insurance, which is $52,000, fuel, $9,000, and then allowances, $50,000. The allowances is the money that gets paid, for example, to the volunteer fire department leadership. So in particular positions, so like a deputy chief would have been paid out of that. Captains would have been paid out of that. My understanding is also medical officer would have been paid out of that, as well as, and I forget, please forgive me, what's NZ's position? Quartermaster. So quartermaster would have been another position that in the past has been paid out of the allowances, all right? Then there would be going into fire equipment debt. Now that one's a little bit more straightforward. It's basically based on payments for things that we have right now, like anticipated warrants on principals and stuff like that. That's $115,000 was the proposed budget for that. And then cumulative fire fund, capital outlays, $300,000. Now, for explaining how the cumulative fire fund works, the cumulative fire fund is one of the funds that was, is the fund that was established for capital purchases of, for example, vehicles and stuff like that. And as we've discussed in past meetings, that fund just keeps recurring and allows us to be able to renew our equipment over time. That was the fund from which we authorized a transfer of $500,000 onto the fire fighting fund, so the 1111 fund. Especially because right now the state has other avenues for being able to pay for a vehicle that could be separate from the Cume Fire Fund. So we knew that in the short term, we could afford to move funds with this allowed one-time transfer authorized by the state legislature and the governor. But right, through a House Enforced Act, for if we need to be most precisely. In addition to that, there's a Form 2. Now, Form 2 is a little bit, it's a little bit simpler than that. This just says is an estimate of estimated miscellaneous revenue that we're expecting to receive. For example, that includes, money for the general fund from vehicle and excise tax or local income tax money, right? And so we don't need to go too in depth into this. Every few years, we should double check that this estimate of miscellaneous revenue is actually is accurate with what we're receiving. So we're expecting to, for example, receive $61,000 into the general fund from July 1st to December. That gets paid out in December. We're also expecting that for the next year, we'll receive $133,000, well, $133.5, $100,000. So, and then township assistance, we're still expecting to receive, according to this budget Form 2, $10,000 for this year from local income tax primarily. And next year, we're expecting to receive $7,846. Now, this looks like there was a revision created by likely our accountant to change what those numbers look like, possibly based on what our actual revenue has been. For fire, we're saying, and this is where we have you can see here a difference. I'll highlight this here. You see it says $438,000. It's proceeds anticipated from borrowing for the emergency loan, and then next year that goes away. So we're expecting to receive $34,961 according to this Form 2. Again, once in a while we should go through and verify these. Make sure that they're accurate so that the state can use the best estimate in generating maximum levies and stuff like that, and how much your maximum budget can be so that it's accurate, reflects that. Fire equipment debt, we're expecting to receive $12,000 in 2022. And then for Cume Fire, we're expected to receive $36,000 from miscellaneous revenue, which comes out to a total of $224,626 from miscellaneous revenues. So that's what we're saying that we will receive. And then, I'm sorry, I have the controls for Zoom, so I have to decrease that and then come back up. And then you can see, sorry. I'm trying to see if there's a way to share them. They're in the website, so the people here in person, it's a little bit tougher to see it, but they're on the website. So we have basically the cash balance through June 30th for all the different funds. So that says basically here we have 29,766. That's the rainy day fund. And we're expecting at the end of December 31st to have $21,567 in the cash balance. That assumes we expend all of the money from the that we budgeted for the year in that fund. And then based on this, based on the budget estimate, et cetera, and how much we're expecting to receive, then we would likely, according to the, based on the estimated budget, or on the budget that was proposed, we would expect to end up $13,433 in the red at the end of 2022 in that fund. If you look at the general fund, the cash balance at the end of June 30th was $153,579. And then based on those expenses required, which according to this is still $106,000 left over. And the revenue that we will receive from property taxes and miscellaneous revenue, the estimated cash balance at the end of December 31st will be $126,000.19. And then after the proposed budget, it would lead to $161,000.76 at the end of December 31st is the estimate. If you go through for township assistance, right now the cash balance is $26,101. Based on the total cash revenue that we're expecting to receive, we'll have $43,000, and we're supposed to expend $30,050 for the rest of the year, from June 30th to December 31st. So if we spend all the money as we said that we would in the budget for last year, that would be a remainder of $13,884. At least as of the pattern of the money that we've seen so far with the limited documentation we have, we don't expect that that fund will be reduced to that amount, but that is the estimate if we were to expend all the money budgeted. And then in 2022, then that budget estimate is high because it'll be cut because that's above the maximum levy. For the 1111 fire, right now, we have a cash balance of 68,831. According to this, the miscellaneous revenue is 500. Everything that's coming in should be 598,000 with necessary expenditures of $497,889. Now that would mean that at year's end, we would have $100,000.786. When you go through for the fire equipment debt, you see similar process of how much we'll end up with. We're estimating $18,517 at the end of December 31st. And then for the cumulative fire, it's expected to be above it. So it says right now, right, and we don't have that many expenses coming in, but if we were to expend everything, it would be $621,000 left over at the end of the year. Now that number assumes that we're expending that money and we don't have as many expenditures in that fund at the moment. That's as budgeted, but as we don't have any actual expenses of that size going in. So it'll be somewhere in that range. Now, what happens next then with those, these is Form 4B, as you see it here. And there's a couple of issues that are currently within our financial situation that we are hoping that we'll be able to get resolved. One of those is that we haven't had the transfer of $500,000 from the cumulative fire fund to the firefighting fund. That's something that the trustee would need to submit so that DLGF is able to do so. Now, DLGF and SBOA are in possession of that document as well. They're simply waiting for Ms. Tyson to submit that form, since it was authorized prior to the September 1st deadline. And that would basically state between that and then Mr. Jones, if you would be able to quickly here, I know that you presented us a documentation and I'd like to be able to give a thorough accounting of what we're expecting. And we know that there's issue where money is in one fund that should be in another. And we'd like to basically look at what those numbers look like if you're able to speak. And I'll pause sharing here or stop sharing.
I don't think you can accurately look at it until you have financial statements of current expenditure and approximate it by the end of the year.
Okay.
But I would request that you show Form 4 that was presented to you from DLGF.
Yes, let me pull it up here. Okay. Would that be the Form 4 as presented to us by DLGF or as edited and amended?
I'd like to see the form that came directly from DLGF, please.
All right, I will do that here. All right. All right. For the participants on Zoom, and I'll move it over here. Let me see if I can do that for the people in person. I should have done this and I apologize. It didn't occur to me to just shift it over. Please forgive me. You can see here, this is the form for the ordinance or resolution for appropriation and tax rates as, you know, DLGF have.
I can't
generated.
see anything on your sharing.
Let me change.
It's
what?
your desktop.
Oh, I see. I'll change the sharing. Stop share. Right. All right, so can you see the ordinance or resolution for appropriations and tax rates? Is that visible online? For
Yes.
those? All right. So, and as you can see here, that ordinance basically states the total amounts that I mentioned during Form 1. So those are based on that. And then, so here you have rainy day fund, adopted budget at 35,000, adopted levy at $0. General fund, adopted budget at $170,000, adopted tax levy at $75,000. Township assistance, adopted budget at $50,000, adopted tax levy at $50,000. Fire, 230, fire equipment debt, 112,182, adopted tax levy at 115, and cumulative fire, 300. And then the tax rate on the side over here, which is for purpose of those that wouldn't have a little bit, just to explain it, right? So that right there says 4 cents, for example, for cumulative fire. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, that would be 4 cents per $100 of assessed value.
That's correct.
All right, 4.06, but yeah, you know.
And basically the form that you're looking at gets generated by the other forms, and that is what is presented at an adoption meeting, which is what you're having right now.
Yeah.
Except that that's not what we did this year, Bill.
I've done 18 adoption meetings in this past month in 7 different counties, and this is exactly what we put together for their board to look at.
Oh, I'm not saying you can't do it that way. I'm just telling you that's not what I did. These numbers did not come from other forms. I went in and I overrode the system and I typed these numbers into this form directly and then submitted it to the DLGF and then printed it and we advertised it. If this is the advertised.
No, excuse me. This is Form 4. You're discussing Form 3. And Form 3 is generated by the other forms. You cannot go into Form 3 and put in your own numbers.
And for the record,
you were talking about the notice to taxpayer. On how can Bill and I just confirm that we're talking about the same things so that I can.
No, Ms. Tyson, you're not recognized. You're not recognized.
It's okay. Explain.
So you don't. Okay.
Gateway is designed to help the local official put together the data in the forms. I don't know who put the data in, but this data is in the elected official side of Gateway. These numbers on Form 4, which is the adoption page that you use in an adoption meeting, are populated by Form 4B. You cannot.
The notice to taxpayers, correct?
No, please look at the form on the screen, and at the top right-hand corner, you'll see budget Form 4. The notice to taxpayers is Form 3. At an adoption meeting, you have to move all the columns from entering them to the adoption side. And as you just did all
and you didn't get this form from me, correct?
That's correct. It was provided by DLGF.
And this is the information that was submitted on the notice to taxpayers.
This is the information that's currently in the local official side of Gateway.
Okay.
And
So we
Ms.
can
Tyson?
agree that I'm trying to talk to Bill for just a second. Can you give me a moment, please?
Oh,
This has not been submitted. It's a matter of semantics.
Okay.
The local government official enters the information. It is not submitted until Form 4 is signed in an adoption meeting by the township board. Then
Okay.
is uploaded.
Yes. So the form, the notice to taxpayers, correct? You can go into Gateway and you can fill out the notice to taxpayers with the adopted budget.
Absolutely not. It has to be.
Okay, that's what I did.
No, you didn't.
Ms. Tyson,
I did.
You cannot generate a Form 3 without putting numbers in Form 1.
We did. We overrode the system.
Ms.
No,
Tyson,
Reedy Financial and myself, Reedy Financial instructed me to complete the notice to taxpayers because we had not had conversations yet about the other forms.
Okay. Well, I disagree with that, but
yeah,
but that's what we did. Okay.
we can
Just as
move
long
on
as
to
it's on the record that that's what we did.
we can move on. And if that's what you did, DLGF has a security issue because Ms. Tyson is a professional hacker, and she can override the system.
No,
going on to the next item.
Hell, that is not
going on to the
what
next
happened.
item.
Reedy Financial, that has experience with the
they instructed
DLGF
you to
website,
override the system.
override the system. Yeah, it's not
so a third party instructed
hacking.
you to
I'm not some
override the
kind of
state-mandated
computer
system.
expert.
So you allowed a third party to come in and override a state-mandated system for our local form of government for which you're responsible. Right?
No, we needed to complete the notice for taxpayers, and they instructed me how to do that in a manner that did not affect the other forms.
That you override a state-mandated system, trustee. Let's get back to the nuts and bolts.
This is not some, like, you're trying to turn this into some kind of issue. The notice for taxpayers. I'm not trying to turn anything into anything other than a budget review. Bill, let me ask you a question. The notice for taxpayers is what sets, that's the maximum that we can ask for our levy, correct?
No, the Form 3 is the maximum that you can adopt for a budget. The Form 3 has no tax rates and no levies on it. The levies and the tax rates are generated on Form 4 for the adoption meeting. And honestly, I worked for DLGF for 10 years and was involved in the development of this product called Gateway, and you cannot override Form 3. You have to have numbers in certain places. They could be totals, but they cannot just go in and generate your own Form 3.
They can be totals. Okay, there you go. All right. So you're saying that we can go into Gateway and we can complete the form that was given to the taxpayers without any line items in there. That's the whole crux of this whole situation. Is people are saying
you'd have to have one line item in each budget
for the totals
that has the total in a line item option, because the total is automatic.
Okay, for the totals. So Reedy Financial may very well, after I completed the notice to taxpayers, have gone in and put the totals somewhere else to create a form. I'm not going to argue that point. What I have, the point that we are trying to make here today is that what I have proposed to the board is the notice to taxpayers numbers that has been advertised and that we were supposed to discuss in our meetings. That is what I asked them to discuss with me.
Oh, well, somebody put all the numbers in the forms that you've been taking a look at. If it wasn't you, it had to be read.
But they're not in there today.
They are there right now today.
They were not in there when I logged in and looked
it would already have had to have been done. So the sequence of events you proposed is preposterous. In order to create the notice that you're saying you submitted, you would have to have put in those
Brendan,
totals.
it is most definitely not preposterous. I am telling you what we did. I am explaining to you what happened.
You're telling me what you did as an individual.
And my office.
However,
and our financial counsel, and that was submitted to the board.
But Reedy had to go and finish your work for you.
They did
Because-
not finish
That's
these
what you just said they
forms.
did. They went in and put total so you could generate the form.
They might have put
The notice to
totals, but
taxpayers.
you're talking about line item. You're showing up and saying that we're proposing line items to you that I haven't even looked at. I am not saying that those are proposed to you. What I
again,
asked
when
you
were
to
you going to
do
do
was
that?
look at the Form 1 from last year.
That's Ms. Tyson.
And
When you go,
that would have been a starting point for our
I know.
discussion of the difference
Right.
in each funds versus what
Right.
we're proposing to get our maximum tax levy. This is not overly complicated. This is not overly
Right.
complicated.
That's
It's
what's so
very
remarkable.
simple what I've asked the board
You're
to
absolutely
do.
right. I'm sure. However, what
So
you're
do
meant
we
to do
want
under
to
your
start
own
with
duties and
the, so do we
responsibilities
want
are
to start
divorced
with
from what you asked
so
the
do we
board
want
to
to
do.
Ms. Tyson.
So do we want to
Ms.
start with
Tyson,
Form
please.
1 and go over it from last year, and
I
we
think we
can
want to go
discuss
through what the
the-
chair's proposed as our agenda and what this meeting has adopted as our
Which
agenda,
is the
Jennifer. I think that's
budget,
the series
right?
of events will proceed.
Well, I
Sure.
only have 30 more minutes and then I have to go, but I can tell you that like we can do the right thing for Wabash Township here today. We can get this done.
So you'll resign today? Is that right, trustee? Because that would be
Sorry?
the right thing for the township, but we're clearly beyond that. So let's review what we have in front of us, please.
Yeah. All righty. I appreciate. Well, I don't. Yeah. This. I need a second to compose myself because this is clearly preposterous. You know, you couldn't write. Hollywood couldn't write a better script. And yeah. So
People are asking to see it on Hell. They're asking, they're saying, yes, the budget, show it to us now. They're saying it in the chat. Let's
Right,
pull
that's
up the
what we're
Form
doing.
1 that I proposed to the board. Can we
Ms.
do that?
Tyson, Ms. Tyson, this is the form that is proposed.
No, on Hell, the form that I emailed you, the Form 1 from last year is
That's
where I
not how
asked us to start
that's
with
not
the
how the
budget.
that's not
Right,
how the
so a dated Form 1, as if that's going to masquerade as the legitimate document for next year's budget, please.
yeah, that's not how the process works, Ms. Tyson. That was last year's Form 1. This year, the one that is uploaded onto Gateway, that's as you proposed it. That's literally
No, it is not. No, it is not. What I'm proposing to you is what was sent to you.
Unfortunately, Ms. Tyson, unfortunately.
This was not submitted on
Tyson.
Hell. This is the part that
Ms.
nobody seems
Tyson.
to understand is that you are showing forms that could easily be updated in Gateway and submitted.
Ms. Tyson.
That information has not been submitted
That's
to
what we're
anyone.
discussing. Hey, trustee, do you recall when we asked you to take a couple minutes and see what you might propose as a change so we could change it before they have to be submitted? That's precisely the point, trustee. Exactly. So let's circle back to that whole situation and the nuts and bolts again. Yeah.
So let's explain.
So we can look at the
Ms.
Form
Tyson.
1.
Let's
Ms.
go back
That
to
would
the
be the
agenda,
start.
please.
Ms.
That would be
Tyson.
the
Let's get
start.
back on the agenda,
of-
please.
Ms. Tyson. Here's
So you don't want
Ms.
to get
Tyson,
anywhere.
please
today.
stop interrupting. Let's explain to you how this is worked everywhere, okay? A form like information is uploaded onto Gateway. Doesn't mean that it's submitted, it's uploaded. It's put in by somebody, and somebody put in the information that says how much each of those fund categories within, like, you know, it has like how much for professional services, how much for salaries, how much for each and this thing. Now, as part of this meeting, we get to change those within those funds if there's a need to. And then we adopt a final amount. That's what we do. And so what we're telling you is, this is the information that you're correct, you didn't provide it to us, but this is the information off of which the budget process begins, regardless of whether
provided you
Ms.
with different
Ms.
Form
Tyson,
1.
hey, stop interrupting, Ms. Tyson.
I provided you
Ms.
a different
Tyson.
Form 1 than what
Point
you're
of order,
showing
Ms.
today.
Tyson, you're out of line. Point of order.
I understand
Yeah,
that I'm
Ms.
out of order.
Tyson,
I want to.
Point of order, you are out of line. Stop speaking.
I understand that. I understand that you're upset, and I want to make sure
No,
that
this
you
is
understand
improper
that we
process. I
could
thought
be
you talked about
reviewing the
professionalism once
information that
upon a
I
time.
submitted to the
Point of
board.
order, you're out of order, ma'am.
Okay. But we could be reviewing the
Point
information
of
that I
order, ma'am,
submitted.
you're
to
out
the
of
board.
order. This is not where we are on the agenda.
No. As we were stating, this is what we have, the forms that were provided to us by DLGF, because that's the information that somebody in the office of a trustee filled out. And unfortunately, Ms. Tyson, whether you want it to be the case or not, that's the information off of which the budget process is based off. And
No, no, it is.
Ms.
No, it does
Tyson,
not
Ms.
have to be. That is
Tyson, you're not
absolutely
recognized, Ms.
true.
Tyson.
You
Ms.
are
Tyson,
You're out
not-
of order, ma'am.
You are
Ms.
not
Tyson,
speaking
you're
Point of
out of
order, just
order
so you're out
and
of
you are
line.
not recognized. As we were stating, this is the information.
That information
Ms.
on the
Tyson,
DLGF
stop
Gateway
interrupting.
website
You're not.
could be updated to what we do here today and submitted to the DLGF, and we could do the right thing
We've
by the
had that
taxpayers.
discussion.
And
Thank
we
you so
could
much.
do it
Ms.
today.
Tyson, you are not
I
recognized.
appreciate your bumper sticker line of doing the right thing by the taxpayers. Let's circle back to the nuts and bolts of a budget. Thank you.
We could do it.
Let's circle back to our agenda, please. Thank you.
Right. So, as we've stated, and amidst all of these interruptions, the Form 1 is the information there for the budget as was entered onto the site. It's the only information that we can consider. Now, I'll give a quick moment for folks to regroup here. Let me pull up this document that I have. I would seek unanimous consent from the board members to do an explanation of what we're considering doing here today. Just so that we have an opportunity to, prior to moving to public comment. Is that all right? Agree. Okay. With unanimous.
Yeah, the budget can be amended for an explainer.
Yeah. Right. So. Right. So for the people on Zoom and the people here in person, this was the budget as this is just the budget process. Unfortunately, regardless of what other folks say, this is just how budget processes play out. And I mean, if you can't tell, we're frustrated because this shouldn't be happening like this. We're also frustrated for other reasons, including the fact that this proposed budget doesn't include funding for the fire protection need of our community. Now, given that this was the trustees' proposed budget, for example, going back to fire protection, you see there that the budget she proposed provides for a maximum of $230,000 through those line items that we mentioned earlier. All right. And that's the budget as proposed through the information. Now, the board has a couple of things that it can do. And just to give a rundown of what those options are. The board could simply vote yes on this budget. And despite what Ms. Tyson says, the process would be done. The line items would be set with the amounts that were uploaded onto Gateway. That's just the way that those would be. They would be adopted as such, and that's it. If we adopted it explicitly as is. Now that's option one. Option two is we vote no on the budget, and essentially the budget reverts back to last year's. What does that mean? If a budget reverts back to last year, whatever those last year's number were, that's what we'll get. We also, for this year, we would not receive the additional, we wouldn't receive the maximum levy amount. So let's say that the maximum levy went from it was about a 5% increase. So let's look at 292. And I'm just going to make a guess out of the top of my head and basically say that 292, so that would be about, the last year's would have been about 280 or so, just off the top of my head, like 2 cents in it, 2.8 cents, because it would have gone up by maximum levy. Now, if we vote no, for this year, we'll be stuck at last year's levy amount. We wouldn't be able to capture that growth on the percentage. Sorry, on the cent rate. Excuse my language there. The third option is, and actually, and the second and the third option have additional parts in the first two. The third option is that we can just move certain things within line items, or raise or decrease. And like there are certain places where we could make some changes. We could fix it so that we can still receive the maximum levy, but our, the budget accurately reflects what that levy would be like, rather than having a higher budget than the levy will allow us to have. In that particular situation, or in all three of these situations, the next part of the process from this board's perspective would be, if needed, that we would go through and do additional appropriations. Now, when can those happen? Additional appropriations generally can happen in March, as late as March. Once the trustee submits the annual report and it's either approved, rejected, amended by the board, then those numbers are finalized, and then DLGF says, okay, so these funds have a certain fund balance. And then you also look at whether you're under the maximum levy, as I understand it. And that allows us to see up to how much an additional appropriation could be. Meaning we're authorizing, as the board, the expenditure of these certain funds in these different categories. And part of what the board is considering today is whether to change the budget so that we accurately reflect how much we're going to receive, and so that expenditures match. And then additionally also outlining to DLGF again, but essentially saying that the $500,000 transfer adopted by the township board on the current year would be entered onto Gateway on the current year financial worksheet on line 12. Now, that's separate from the process that will need to happen to fix the funds that are incorrectly placed in the emergency loan fund, rather than having been transferred as required onto the firefighting fund. For a brief overview of what those look like, that would mean that as of next year, we would have, if it were all done correctly, we would have $500,000 from that emergency transfer. Those the estimate is about $388,000 that after we get the money that we're expecting to receive to be able to pay off the loan, that'll be the balance of what we would have on that fund. And so we would be able to move $388,000, or that should have already been there, on the firefighting fund. All right. That's once the loan payments and everything are done. So that's 500,000 plus 388. And now our firefighting budget, if we were to expend everything, as you saw, stated something along the lines of $100,000 left over. Now, that number isn't accurate in the sense that we haven't had firefighters, and we're not going to expend all of those, salaries for the last few months, here in a month and 2 months, right? Like, since their termination, we haven't had firefighters and we haven't had those expenses. We also never got through in setting up PERF because the trustee terminated the firefighters and she hadn't gone through the work prior to that to establish PERF for them, although the board had authorized it. So we would have those monies as well as Social Security monies available, okay? That's kind of what we have there. Now, one of the paths that this board is considering is going to be to adopt a version of this budget and move money from like where it should be, whatnot, and then go through and do an additional appropriation in January based on those monies, which, in case that you haven't noticed, if it's done correctly, 500 plus 388 plus likely close to 200 or $250,000 left over in fire fund because it's not been used for personnel. That would mean that we would have over $1 million left over at the end of the year in firefighting funds, which would allow us to create an additional appropriation that would fund the firefighters that we need, the 3 paid firefighters, the fire chief, etc. Now, as you are all aware, because most of you have been here throughout this entire messy process, at the end of the day, we can allocate the money, apportion it, authorize expenditure, and expected expenditure. The trustee would have to hire the people according to the salary resolution that is authorized. Our current salary resolution, as we've stated, includes the salary for the trustee at that amount, the board's at $2,500 a year. We're getting rich off of this job, guys. And then the ones for the different firefighters and the office assistant. Okay. And that is one of the paths that we are considering moving on at this point. All right. Just wanted to give an explanation of the path that we are considering, because the money's there, but if we were to do anything, we can continue and carry over last year's mistakes and stuff on the budget by just voting no. We could authorize this budget as is and still carry over some mistakes in this forms too, in these forms. Or we could adopt it, change it and adopt it, and then make sure that we have additional appropriations to pay for the firefighters. Now, for explanation, an additional appropriation would be something that the board does. The trustee has no authority in an additional appropriation. The only limit is based on how much money is left over and how far under the maximum levy we are. Those are basically the limiting factors as to how much we can allocate additionally. And given that we have $1 million at the end of the year, if this process is done right and the numbers are updated accurately and the trustee submits the form or DLGF goes through and does it otherwise anyway, because it's properly authorized, we have the money to be able to pay for those firefighters come spring. So those are the options on the table. All right. Now, we have an opportunity for public comment. As we've stated in the past, people that are allowed to make public comment are township residents and other interested parties, such as business owners in the township, elected officials from other townships or other units that would be impacted by our budget also have an ability to speak, as this board has allowed for their participation in the meeting historically. All right. So going on to public comment before we enter the consideration of a budget where we would be able to amend stuff or whatnot. Is there any public comment from, I'll start with Zoom. Is there any public comment from members on Zoom? You can unmute yourself if so.
And he'll have a question.
All right. Seeing none yet on Zoom, I'll allow, we have Jim Lewis over here has a opportunity here, so he can come up and speak and is recognized.
My question is this: if you do not adopt this year's budget and it reverts to last year's budget, all of those items you talk about being able to carry forward will still be adaptable, right?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. If you refuse to adopt the budget this year and it reverts back to last year's budget, all of those items you talked about, the $500,000 and the transfer that hasn't been moved, to $380,000 plus or minus left over in the emergency loan, plus the extra $100,000 to $150,000, $200,000 left in the fire budget would all still be there. Okay. My question or my problem is that with the proposed budget this year, the fire department's losing $230,000 out of its budget for personnel. If you take out the emergency loan from last year, our budget last year was $1,689,000. So if you take the $420,000 out of that, it would be $1,269,975,000. Would be the budget compared to $897,000 that is budgeted for this year. My recommendation would be for you to not accept this year's budget.
All right. Is there any additional public comment here? From people in person here, is there anything else? From people on Zoom? Is there anybody that would like to speak?
Can I respond to Jim Lewis?
It's public comment. You're not allowed a response.
So he doesn't have a question. Okay. That's not a question. He doesn't want an answer to the fire department losing $200,000.
I don't think that was the question. I think we actually answered his question. And I thought this time was actually for residents. My bad.
Would you be able to state your, when you come up, your name so that Brendan can include it? You can come up and you're recognized.
Okay. My name is Wesley White. I'm a township resident. Any budget that's adopted needs to provide salaries for some paid firefighters. When I call 911, I expect people to show up. I've been promised people to show up, and they need to be properly compensated for putting their lives on the line. So I ask that the board and the trustee who is elected to actually continue sufficient firefighting doesn't walk away from money that's available. Spend every penny that we have inside legal boundaries. Get the firefighters paid now. Hire a full complement that's allowed, and we'll work on next year's and years after that budget in a reasonable manner, hopefully with professionalism. Quit asking people to save our lives for free. Pass a budget that is absolutely the best you can do. Ms. Tissing, I'm asking that you hire these people. You may not need the fire protection because of where you live, but I do. You're counting on West Side firefighters. I'm not without mutual aid. So let's increase the level of professionalism here. Let's solve the money problem. The dollars and cents are there. Put it where it needs to go. Please hire the people, and let's get back to some rational local government.
Agreed.
I agree. I think that's a wonderful starting place. If we all agree on that, I think we can make great progress.
Is there any other public comment? Now, before we move on to the next item, if biological needs, would you be able to take a 10-minute break to be able to use the restroom, etc., before we go on to the next part, given that this has taken way longer than expected due to frequent interruptions? Do I have a second to like to suspend the meeting for 10 minutes? There's a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I don't know if Brendan has.
It is suspended.
All right. So we'll be back in 10 minutes to use the restroom.
I show us with just a little bit of time left.
All right, Mr. Secretary, I'm making a motion that we return to the meeting.
Recognized.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, motion carries unanimously. We're back to the meeting. Let me pull this up here and stop sharing here. Second, so that I can have the agenda over here. Okay. All right. So we're now on to agenda item number 8, consideration of and vote on the proposed 2022 budget. I'll open this section by doing a recap of where we are. So as we sit here today, we would be voting on the numbers, and we have an adopted resolution that we will consider compared to the Form 4 that is available on Gateway. And we have an additional explanation of what that looks like. So, and let me pull up my tablet here so that I can read some of the language. So. All right. So okay, so a quick, again, recap of what happens right now. Now, the biggest part of what's here is that going back to what a normal process would be like, we'd sit down here with a Form 1, Form 2, Form 4, Form B. We would hammer out changes. If we needed to decrease something, we'd decrease it, and we'd have a matching line item as to what that would look like, okay? The board has ultimate authority as to what those line items look like within each particular fund. And need to do some changes if we do propose this, if we do adopt a resolution today that changes some stuff. The other part of what we can do is essentially vote no, and the budget as approved for last year would be the starting out budget for next year. The board would still have authority to move between line items, but you know, that would be where we could start. Now, as stated, you know, some of the concerns are that we wouldn't be able to receive this year the additional roughly $40,000 to $50,000 if we didn't adopt a version of this. Now, and given how the trustee has mismanaged the township, every penny counts. So opening debate, this would be my preferred solution or a path forward for the board. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come with some reservations, because it's absolutely stupid to have to consider a budget that doesn't pass, that doesn't out straight from the gate out of day one give money for paid firefighters that we know we need. So, you know, that's a starting point where we're at right now. So as board chair and member of the board, I guess, my proposed plan would basically be that we follow some of the recommendations that Bill Jones has set forth here. For example, we would be cutting the 2022 rainy day fund by $21,000 because otherwise we'd end up in the negative based on what we have. Part two of that would be to reduce the general fund levy to $31,216 due to constraints from the unit maximum levy. Now, as we've said earlier, and you can see here, and I'll read through that in a second so that people have access to that. It doesn't mean that the budget changes, but rather what the adopted tax levy is. Because if we do not, and I'll give Mr. Jones an opportunity to speak here in a second. The second option is reducing township assistance fund. The second part of that is reducing township assistance fund levy to $35,000 due to constraints from the unit maximum levy. Now, and if my understanding is correct, this would be a quick question, Bill. The reason why we are doing this or considering doing this would be that the general and township assistance basically maximum levy is kind of combined. So if we had a maximum levy that was above on either of those funds, then they could decide how to cut it. You know, let's say that the original proposed one as uploaded onto Gateway or generated by Gateway says that it's a $75,000 tax levy for general and a $50,000 tax levy for township assistance. But those numbers are significantly above the combined maximum, which is $66,216. So DLGF could decide however they want to make those cuts as to what the tax levy would be like. Is that an accurate understanding, Mr. Jones?
That's correct.
All right. So what we're essentially saying is this is the amount that'll go exactly into each fund. Okay. Because we don't want to have an opportunity we don't want to end up in a situation where we lose money for the funds, especially township assistance. So we want to make sure that we can get that amount. So the path that this would go on, as I recognize, would mean that on paper, the board would be saying right now we're in favor of not having paid firefighters. Now, that couldn't be further from the truth. This board has fought day and night to make sure that we have paid firefighting protection. We've had meeting after meeting. We've met as early as 8 a.m. to try to join a lawsuit when the trustee terminated the employment of the firefighters. And we've done all of the work necessary to make sure that we have fire protection. What this would allow us to do is that part 4 of this resolution text here would say that we are, and I think that we can change the language a little bit. So it would basically be saying uploading onto Gateway the $500,000 transfer adopted by the township board. And that would essentially, wait, let me give me a second here. I see Eric Hoppengems is trying to join. So what that would do would be that it would compel them to transfer the $500,000 that the trustee has refused to submit the resolution for. Is that an accurate understanding of that, Mr. Jones, for that part?
Yes.
So in compelling the DLGF to do the work that they're honestly just waiting to do, like, you know, it's not that they don't want to help us. They've just been waiting for the trustee to submit that information. So we're saying this properly passed resolution will go in and then we can do the work. And then we have additional funds left over on fire protection that we can still allocate. And this would allow us, Mr. Jones, if this is your understanding, that we could, as early as January, if the transfer happens soon, be able to hold a meeting to have additional allocations for fire protection. Is that correct?
It provides a foundation to start that process, but you still have to deal with the trustee issue.
Yep, correct. Exactly. So we would be able to fund the money. It doesn't mean that we get to hire the people, obviously. But then we'd be able to do an additional appropriation for, say, 3 firefighters and a chief, as long as, and their respective benefits and health insurance, as long as the amount is under the $500,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, and we'll probably have to write, similar to last meeting, we'll probably have to write a resolution here on the fly. But the path that I suggesting that the board go on is that we pass this resolution, which would cement what those tax rates are, or tax levies are, for the township assistance and the general fund, so that we're able to have control over that particular scenario and don't end up getting cut in places that we didn't expect to or didn't want to, because the LGF can cut however they want at the end of the day if we give them wrong information, or over, go over the amount. And then in January, we would be moving forward to do an additional allocation or appropriation, excuse me, of the money for to be able to pay for those firefighters, because the money's there. Like, I know I've said it 1,000 times, but that hasn't changed. The money's there now. It's a pretty, pardon my French, but it's a pretty shitty situation to be in, to be in a place where you have to consider this budget, which honestly is kind of a disgrace for our fire department and our community, which gets the fire protection. But we're not going to stop with just this budget. We're going to make sure that we do the necessary appropriation so that we can have the fire protection as early as possible next year. Now, I caution again that at the end of the day, the trustee is the one that has to hire them. Now, we want Drew, Joe, and Travis back, because they should have the right to come back. They were cut unnecessarily in this trustee's vicious campaign, and want to make sure that they're able to continue supporting our department the way they want it to, and continue supporting our community. So, so going forward that way, I would I present a motion that we consider this, that we adopt this resolution. We'll have to do, actually, before we do that, a quick edit. So, and Mr. Jones, I'll cede you some time here. Is your understanding that what would be the best way to phrase line 4, so that Mr. Secretary can take it down? Like the part 4, which is the $500,000 transfer. What's the best language to use there?
I think I have language here as proposed.
Yeah, Brendan has.
Enter the 5. Correct. Yes, I have Bill's proposed language, and I'm happy to read it, but I think we're solid on that.
Would you be able to read it and make sure that it reflects the best way possible to say that?
As proposed by Bill's recommendation, enter the $500,000 transfer adopted by the Township Board on the current year fiscal worksheet on line 12 of the Cumulative Fire Fund, and note the transfer to the 1111 Firefighting Fund.
Is that the best language, Bill? You said yes, sorry. I kind of cut off there.
That is the specific steps that are required in the local official side of Gateway to execute what you want to accomplish.
Okay. And essentially, we're basically telling there, just to double check, we're telling DLGF to do that for us, correct?
Well, it'd be better if the trustee did it, or whoever's responsible, if Reedy, whoever's going to finish this does, because the other edits will have to be done in the local official side of Gateway too.
Okay. All right. Part of me wants to laugh a little bit. Yes, it would be better if it had been done already, or if the trustee would do it. But
Move the question.
yeah. So I'll move to the question here. well, actually, I'll give board members an opportunity to speak if they want, and then we can move to the question. So do either of you want to speak other than what I said? No, it's perfect. All right, David said no. Brendan, do you want to speak?
No, I'm not in a position to do so. No, I have to kind of keep up here with the notes.
All right. All right, so then I would move to the question, which it says, whereas, and I'll read it again, whereas the Township Board of Wabash Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana has reviewed the proposed 2022 budget. Whereas specific issues have been identified and must be resolved prior to adoption. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Board of Wabash Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, requires the following changes in the 2022 budget. Reduce the 2022 rainy day budget to $21,000 due to available revenue. Reduce the general fund levy to $31,216 due to constraints from the unit maximum levy. Reduce the township assistance fund levy to $35,000 due to constraints from the unit maximum levy. Enter the $500,000 transfer adopted by the township board on the current year financial worksheet on line 12 of the cumulative fire fund and note the transfer to the 1111 firefighting fund. The Wabash Township Board orders these changes made in the applicable DLGF forms. With completion of the above changes to the prescribed forms, the Wabash Township Board moves to accept the 2020 proposed budget with identified changes. Adopted this 30th day of October, 2021.
And for clarification, that would be resolution 2021-14, I believe.
Correct. And
which I have so named in the minutes.
Yeah, and if it's okay with you guys, just so that it matches the text of this in a few minutes or after the meeting, I'm going to copy it. It's the same text, but essentially move it onto the format that we have for the other resolutions, just so that, just aesthetically, if that's okay with you guys.
Yes.
Yeah, of course you can reformat it. Yeah.
All right, perfect. And then we'll print them off and have it for signature. Okay. So, Mr. Secretary, if you could call the roll.
Chair Valentine, how do you vote on resolution 2021-14?
I vote aye.
Member David Tate, how do you vote on the aforementioned resolution?
I vote aye.
And the secretary will vote aye in the affirmative in order for the motion, the resolution thereby to carry unanimously. Oh, pardon me, to move close debate on the, pardon me, so I apologize. We are voting to close debate on the proposed resolution, just for clarity. And I will vote aye, so therefore we can move on to the actual resolution itself for passage for resolution for 2021-14. Chair Valentine, how do you vote on the resolution for passage this time?
Aye.
Okay, Member David Tate, how do you vote on the resolution for passage?
Aye.
And Secretary Betts will also vote in the affirmative such that the resolution will carry unanimously and be adopted by this Wabash Township Board on October 30th, 2021. Thank you, Chair.
All right, and this resolution, once reformatted, will be signed, and it'll be sent to both the trustee and DLGF and SBOA so that it is on their records. Attached with that, obviously, it's the ordinance or resolution for appropriations and tax rates, so that's incorporated in that as well. And we read earlier what those changes are, and we'll upload it as well to our site so people can see what that looks like. Now, I would move that we suspend regular order, and for the purpose of making it explicit what the intentions of these board are, I would move, and this is one of those challenging moments where we're going to have to do some work on the fly here, but I would move that we consider a resolution 2021-15, which would consider the which would outline what processes the board is going to go through next so that we can allocate the appropriate the funding for the firefighters. All right.
Sure, we can do so, but I will have to note that I too am on a limited clock and cannot stay for too much longer. So we'll need to kind of make quick work of it.
Yeah, we'll do it as quickly as possible here. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Bill, you're recognized.
I'm concerned that if you are making a motion that has to do with finances that would be part of an additional appropriation, that has to be advertised before you can pass it.
All right, and would we be, without discussing the general, would we be able to say that we will consider like doing that upcoming? We won't have any numbers or details or anything like that.
That's fine.
Yeah, that would be the text. Yeah, we'll make sure that we are moving that, but not actually, you know, we'll have to do a separate meeting and notice what the additional appropriations would be, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, Brendan, I sent it to you so that you have it available there.
Okay. I have received it and I'm constituting the text into our minutes.
Well, it hasn't been changed yet. Sorry. So that's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that'll be a quick thing here. Sorry.
I got you.
Sorry, I'm opening on the bigger computer so that I can share with the public as we make the changes. Should be pretty quick. All right. So whereas the Wabash Township Board has resolved to adopt an amended version of the proposed 2022 budget. Whereas the proposed budget limited the funding of the fire department dollars. Efficient. All right, so let me see here and see if there's any changes that we need to do. All right, so, and I'm still writing here, but whereas the Wabash Township Board has resolved to adopt an amended version of the proposed 2022 budget. Whereas the adopted budget limited the funding of the fire department to $230,000. And obviously that's exclusively because Tyson wrote that budget and it, I mean, frankly sucks. Whereas resolution 2021-14 requires a trustee to upload the necessary documentation to transfer the $500,000 from the cumulative fire fund to the firefighting fund. Now therefore be it resolved by the Wabash Township Advisory Board that the board will begin the process of studying the necessary appropriation of additional funds as early as January 2022. So that our township can have the needed paid fire personnel and hire. I'm going to add a whereas clause here. So all right. Right. So I'll read it through here one last time, Brendan. Let me put it up. Right. So here it is. Whereas the Wabash Township Board has resolved to adopt an amended version of the proposed 2022 budget. Whereas the adopted budget limited the funding of the fire department to $230,000. Whereas that funding level is insufficient to provide for the salaries and benefits of the necessary paid fire personnel. Whereas resolution 2021-14 requires the trustee to upload the necessary documentation to transfer the $500,000 from the cumulative fire fund to the firefighting fund. Whereas at least 3 full-time firefighters are needed to provide basic fire protection for the township. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Wabash Township Advisory Board that the board will begin the process of studying the necessary appropriation of additional funds as early as January 2022, so that our township can hire the needed paid fire personnel. Now, are there any discussion or amendments to the resolution?
I don't believe it's the 26th.
Oh, I can change the date on the end. I'm sorry. I appreciate that. I didn't catch that. I edited the main body of the text, not the, thanks.
This is good with Bill.
Bill, does this look good to you? I can see the moment of my time to you. Does this not run any risk or anything like that?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. Is there any changes or any discussion, Brendan or David? Hearing none, I would move that we end debate on resolution number 2021-15. Well, I seek unanimous consent to end debate on resolution 2021-15.
So moved.
All right. Hearing unanimous consent to end debate on resolution 2021-15. Move to a vote on the resolution itself. Mr. Secretary, will you call the roll? Just want to see. Brendan, are you there?
Yes, Chair. Chair, Honorable Valentin, how do you vote on resolution 2021-15?
I vote in the affirmative.
Member David Tate, how do you vote on resolution 2021-15?
In the affirmative.
Right.
And I, Secretary Brendan Best, will vote in the affirmative as well. Therefore, resolution 2021-15 carries unanimously by this board on this day, 10/30/21.
All right. And then moving on to the next item on the agenda, let me stop sharing. All right. So right now we don't have any old business. We have the future meeting dates for November 16th and December 18th. And prior to moving on to adjournment, I just wanted to give a quick statement and say, I know that this vote could be construed as the board not wanting fire protection. That couldn't be further from the case. We're gonna, as stated on that resolution 2021-15, we're gonna be making sure that through the additional appropriation process, we actually provide the money necessary. Unfortunately, the budget as presented is the only one that we can look at. We can't raise the numbers. I have my own thoughts on that. I think that that's one of those things that a state legislature should consider, but it's not something that I have any control over. And I'm not going to go around and mess with the rules or try to do anything else, because that's not how the system works, So using the additional appropriations process provides us the best avenue to be able to maximize the amount that we received and be able to go through and adopt a resolution at some point that allows us to do an additional appropriation without needing the approval of Ms. Tyson, given that she clearly doesn't have the township's best interest at heart. So moving into that, I would move that we adjourn the meeting. Do I have all those in favor say aye? Well,
Aye. With gratitude.
All those
We will adjourn
opposed?
here at 2:15.
Nobody's opposed to ending this meeting? Oh, man. All right. Well, going back onto it.
Yes, we're gonna have another.
This meeting is adjourned at 2:50 p.m. As we said, on November 16th, we have an upcoming meeting. I think that given that we don't have full information, we'll be talking about such things as the fire protection, what we need to do, and what changes to the line items we need to submit to those Form 1. All right. Hope you guys have a good day. I'll be going back here to the Zoom and making sure to stop recording.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.